Hello, all. It is one day until the final public Lady Bits. If you'd like to see the bonus episode of Lady Bits, there is still time. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron. Patreon.com/Leanna K. Not only do the Kickstarter backers at certain tiers get the bonus episode, but so do patrons. So now's a good time to become a patron so you don't miss the bonus episode. But the final episode seems to be well received by the patrons. Patrons also get these more post-produced episodes early, in part so they can catch errors. They already caught one mispronunciation, so I could add it to the little description box. So that's coming tomorrow, and I'm very excited about it because I'm very proud of this episode. I finally feel like I know what I'm doing just in time for it to be over. That's always the way it works. But that's not what I'm talking about today. I want to do a thing that I wanted to talk about yesterday, but the video was getting a bit long, and I only wanted to get yelled at about so much in one chunk, because when you talk about dicey situations like this, you get yelled at. It just comes with it. But some people hear you, and it helps them, and that's why you do it, even with the noise. I want to talk about this phrase that I keep hearing thrown around the news lately, and it drives me crazy because as a geek and a nerd, I identify as both. I have issues with this phrase, and this phrase is "boys will be boys." And the reason I have problems with this phrase is the boys I hung around with, for the most part, were not the boys will be boys stereotype. The boys will be boys stereotype is guys who get into trouble and cause not just mischief, which I would be okay with. Mischief's cool, chaotic good for the win. But actually get into trouble. They get, gross drunk. They abuse women. They do all this stuff that is considered manly. And I mock this because I don't think it's manly. I think it's stupid and insecure and juvenile. And it's this thing that the mainstream not just encourages, but pressures guys to be. And my friends, and I've always had male friends right from a young age. I just naturally gravitated more to male friends because of my interests. They weren't like that. They were into computers, and they were sensitive and, intellectual, and were more into Dungeons and Dragons and sports ball. And I preferred that. I liked that. I felt like they had the confidence to be themselves and actually admit they like stuff that wasn't mainstream popular. And I thought that was more manly than the manly. And society didn't reward them for it. They were punished. They were bullied. They were picked on for not developing that, violent physicality. And I always thought that was really stupid. And I think, that as much as the women's stuff got me into talking about these issues, is I wanted to kind of, stand up for these guys from an odd position of privilege as a woman in the media. I have the ability to sort of validate and say, hey, these guys are cool in a way that these guys themselves can't, because even though, it's the best time to be a nerd, I think, ever, there's still some, stereotypes that persist. Every nerd show has something about awkwardness with women. And let me tell you something, the jocks are just awkward with women in a different way. All this stuff that we've heard about, the Kavanaugh hearings are an offshoot of being awkward with women and feeling like you're supposed to be a certain way. I mean, that's the read I get off Kavanaugh, is he was a guy who was actually kind of a nerd. He kept extensive calendars, for God's sakes. Nerd. But he was trying to be the jock. He was trying to be one of the cool kids, and it wasn't quite taking. And so he as I saw a lot of guys do, used booze as a social lubricant and didn't know when to quit. That's usually a sign that someone has deep social anxiety. Um, I know that's generalizing. That, again, is just in my experience. The people who get rip roaring drunk at parties tend to have social anxiety, and they use booze to overcome the social anxiety. So I just wanted to take the opportunity, because yesterday was kind of heavy. I wanted to take the opportunity to kind of send some appreciation to those guys who had the non-traditional internal confidence to not be like mainstream guys. And this is part of what the frustration is in the gaming industry, is that, these guys actually really do respect women, like really do. They don't just give it lip service, and they don't have this politically correct, benevolent, sexist, women should be put on pedestals kind of thinking that also gets rewarded by mainstream society. They're also, I don't care what you are, let's game. And I much prefer that. I much prefer actual equality, even if sometimes they talk in a way that I consider rude, because that's the way guys talk to their friends. I've learned to recognize it. Hey, if a guy starts talking to you in that kind of way that women... There's a difference between overly familiar in a bad way and overly familiar in a you're just not socialized this way. And in gaming, it's a lot more you're one of us, so we're going to talk to you like you're one of us, dick face asshole. Like that's the way gamers talk. Trash talk is a thing. And it took me quite a while to sort of realize, because I am a nerd and a geek, that these weren't people being rude. These were markers of acceptance that, we don't see you as another. You're one of us, and we're going to talk to you accordingly. Now, the downside to this is, you kind of get branded as one of the guys. You're seen as the friend group. And in sort of an odd way, you're like too trustworthy to date, which is an odd dynamic that just comes from teenage awkwardness. I don't want to demonize it or make it seem evil. It just is. But that was something I really didn't understand growing up, but it caused me a lot of why moments. But now I kind of see it for what it is. And now I think I appreciate friendships in a way I didn't when I was younger, because there was so much social pressure to be that girl that, all the guys saw as, I don't even know what the word is, pretty, desirable, I don't know, just that girl like you see in the movies that guys are interested in. It's a Taylor Swift song, right? Like, she wears short skirts, I wear sneakers, she's cheer captain and I'm on the bleachers. I wasn't on the bleachers. I was hanging upside down on the back of the bleachers to freak the mundanes. True story about, I think that was like grade 4. Gifted program for the win. But that was a bit of outrage warrior right there, wasn't it? That was a social justice warrior. Woke. But yeah, it kind of took me time to become comfortable with being a nerd girl and start speaking out on behalf of nerd girls. And the flip side of that is I was a nerd and a geek, which intersects with guys who are nerds and a geek, and gender atypical in a lot of ways. And I don't know that there's anybody really speaking for them, because I find that a lot of the nerds that make good, the people who get on the TV shows or, get any sort of status, they don't own that privilege and use it to advocate for other geeks. They conform by either making fun of the stereotypes about nerds, or they're just like, I'm not like you. And they like go out of their way to be Mr. Cool. In Silicon Valley, that one guy who's always like, this guy fucks, that sort of thing. That's just like, God, that's people who got a lot of money and status but never grew up. And I think we need more legitimate voicing of nerd cred, and, women coming forward and saying, I actually prefer guys who are nerdy and I'm not interested in that masculine stereotype. And it's interesting because women do it in sort of indirect ways, because there aren't very many nerd masculine role models that are seen that way. Like, it's little things like, the girls who preferred Spock to Kirk, me. The girls who are more interested in Loki from the Thor movies, the Tom Hiddleston character, than Thor himself. That's the way it kind of manifests, but that's not quite the guy who fixes your computer, is it? And I think we need more realizing that the guy who fixes your computer isn't just an awkward neophyte, eunuch. They're cool guys too, and they have interests, and I have these friends of mine who are single, and I can't for the life of me figure out why. And then I realize, oh yeah, because a lot of women are just as dumb as the men we complain about being dumb, right? So I'm doing my part. I thought that this is important with all this, toxin in the air about men are scum and women must rise up and boys will be boys and that's toxic and all that stuff, to actually say, no, not all boys are those sorts of boys, and we're never going to address that issue unless we actually start rewarding young men for not being like that. And I'm interested in your suggestions about how we do that. How do we actively, it's not even reward, it's motivate. It's give some sort of like moral framework for, role models or something to create almost a character template so guys know how to be that. I mean, that's the big issue in so many things, right? Like, how do you be your authentic self and have people accept that, instead of constantly being rejected for going with what feels right to you, showing the world who you are. And the reason that's so important is I know a lot of people who are very conformist and are what some would consider to be popular, but they're not happy because they're always hiding. They're grotesque people pleasers, and they don't think anyone likes them because nobody actually knows them. They know this thing that, my nose is going red again. God damn it, not as bad as before. But they know this projection that they put into the world, but they don't know them. And then I see these people who are, open enough to sort of, I have a furry icon on the internet. And okay, they might be anonymous or use a pseudonym, but for God's sakes, they're at least out there doing it. They're not just hiding it. They have an element of themselves that they are allowing the world to see. They are actually engaging in that performance. And I respect that immensely. And that sort of overrides when I think something is kind of weird. I'm not saying that's furries. I'm saying, like, on Elementary, they talked about being sexually aroused by bees. And it was a whole thing that it was like the 4chan style group that's on that they get information from. There was a guy who wanted them to put on Barry White and shoot Sherlock's beehives because he got off on it. But he admitted that to someone in a public forum, even though it wasn't his name, that confidence enough to be seen, even under an alternate identity or a pseudonym or anonymity or whatever. Some people never go there. They try to bottle it all up inside. And I think that's why I actually like nerds. I actually like the freaks and geeks contingent that makes up the internet, because there's just an element of authenticity to internet culture And that's why I think people freak out so badly about trolls or when people are misrepresenting who they are, is that when people prey on that, they are wrecking the the performative authenticity that people feel they can be. They can even be exaggerated versions of this element of themselves that they feel like, meat space rejects. And that's why I think that, nerd conventions like sci-fi conventions, comic book conventions go so horribly awry, is those two cultures clash. And then it's like, who am I supposed to be? Because it's both worlds overlapping. But that's a topic for another time. I just wanted to send some, support and appreciation for the guys out there who are not the boys who boys will apparently be. And there's a lot of talk about how women are being triggered, and women are having to relive the worst moments of their lives. But I'm pretty sure there's a lot of guys out there also having an element of trauma, hearing boys will be boys over and over and over again. Because on the one hand, they were never those boys. And they were socially punished for being those boys. And there's a lot of trauma connected to that. So I just wanted to be like, I see you. So I support you. We can be together in this. And I think that's really important. So that's all I have to say. Lady Bits tomorrow. It's funny. It's crazy. There are cats. It gets real. I share a really personal story at the end. It has all the things, including over-the-top cosplay. So tomorrow you will meet Princess Sparkle Muffin. Get ready. All right? Thanks for watching. See you